Hello, welcome to the Godless Family Webcast. I'm your host, Aubrey Adrianson, and with me tonight is my co-host, Amanda Hayes. Say hello, Amanda.
Hi.
And our guest tonight is Religious Tourist on Twitter, and tonight we're just going to call him T because he told me he likes the mystery. So, say hello, T.
Hello. My voice broke there. It's nice to reach puberty on a live show, isn't it? Yeah. Good start.
Yeah, you can't take it back, unfortunately. And so, before the show, I did post links to your blog, and I was hoping that maybe you'd like to take a minute and tell us a little bit about yourself, what you've been doing, and basically tell us about religious tourism.
Okay. Yeah, I started about, what date is it? September, isn't it? Started about 17 months ago, back last February. And the idea was to choose a different religion every month and live it out as much as possible. In the short time frame you have, I mean, there's obviously things like pilgrims to Mecca and so on. Was one, not in my budget, two, not in the time frame. So just trying to do as much as I could within a 30-mile radius of my house because I'm lazy. The idea was 12 religions, 12 months. It didn't work out quite that way because you get to the end of one religion and there'll be a religious holiday just over the horizon, so you'll kind of hang on to see that. So for paganism, there was the autumnal equinox, and I thought it'd be quite nice to do that. So that was another week, and it all added up to taking about 16 months of my life, which was nice.
So you said you just stay within a 30-mile vicinity of your house, so you're not like traveling to other countries, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's paradoxical to name tourist, but yeah, I stay very close.
Okay.
The idea is that I'd like to be back home and in my pajamas by 6 p.m. So
that's fair. That is fair. Awesome.
So, why did you decide to do this?
I was originally trying to write a novel. I wanted to write a book for a while, and I came up with this storyline. I thought I'll have a go at that, and it seemed all right. But then I'm not very good at writing. I'm not very good at imagining things, and the storyline I came up with was so convoluted I couldn't do it. So I thought, most people write about what they know, and my life has been terribly tedious for all the first 20 odd years of it. So I thought I'd better do something exciting, and I'd had an interest in religion. I was doing a degree in biology, and you kind of watch all these documentaries on it, which aren't many, and I came across one by Richard Dawkins, where he was doing the Genius of Charles Darwin. He was going around to all these schools, and it just seemed like he was arguing with people. I thought, that's kind of a life I would like. I'd like to just argue with people professionally. And I thought the religious seemed to be very easy to wind up according to that program, so I'll go and do it myself. And I'd never had a religion. I'd never had a religious background. My parents were both unreligious. My dad was actually angry at religious because he was baptized without his say. He wasn't supposed to have a say when he was 1 year old. But so he kept it completely out of our house. And you kind of think at a certain point in your life, you want to know about as much of the world as possible. And they seemed like such a big part of it, and maybe it was something I'd missed out on. I wasn't sure, so I thought now was the time to have a go at something.
Great. Yeah, I didn't grow up in a religious household either. My parents, and I've told the story before, but they left their households angry at not so much religion, but angry at the church. And they felt like churches were really just there to take your money, and the most religious people were also the most hypocritical. But they still held on to their belief in God. So we grew up in a non-religious household, but the expectation was still that you were to be some sort of Christian. But it's funny. Up until recently, I thought that I knew quite a bit about religion, but I think I do, but I know nothing about church. And so every once in a while, someone will say something about what's happening in church. And I'm like, oh, you do that? Things happen? Like tithing. had no idea people gave money to churches until like 5 years ago. And my mother-in-law's like, yeah, how do you think we run? I'm like, I don't know. You put money in a basket. You actually gave a percentage of your wages. That's crazy. But that's just what happens when you grow up in a non-religious household, and your parents are trying to keep it out. You really do grow up ignorant of those kind of things.
Mm.
So I'm really interested in your adventures in religious tourism. And so I'll go on to my next question. Let's see here. Could you share some stories from your experience? Things that were most surprising, or maybe even some of the hardest religious practices to follow. You choose.
The hardest was Ramadan. So I did the fasting for 30 days. That was hard.
Fasting for 30 days?
Yeah.
What?
So you can't eat during daylight hours, and hilariously it was in the middle of summer, and you can't drink either. So no food or water throughout the entire hot summer's day. So it was about 30 degrees. In England we very rarely get anything above 12 degrees, but this was the time that we did. And so I think you have to get up about 4:30 in the morning, fill your face with porridge, tears streaming down your face, upset at the rest of the day. Then you try and hibernate until as late in the day as possible, and then you wake up and curse your existence until the sun goes down at 9 o'clock at night. And then you eat. You can't eat. The thing is, you can't eat that much. I'm not really a big eater anyway, so on the first morning, I'd done no preparation. I know when you go into exams and stuff, you're supposed to revise and so on. I just thought that'll be fine. It's just not eating for a bit. It's really hard. It's really hard. And I woke up at 4:30 on the first morning. And I thought I'll have 2 bowls of porridge, I'll have 2 bananas, and yogurt and all this kind of stuff. All this like slow release energy stuff. I got down my first half bowl of porridge. Oh, done. I couldn't eat anymore. So it was a hard few days because you have to really train yourself to be able to eat a lot at one point and then just let it run out run out in the day. That's probably a poor choice of words. I don't mean literally run out. Yeah.
So what is what's the idea behind fasting for 30 days for Ramadan? Why do they do that?
It's actually fairly secular. The reasons we're in a privileged part of the world, and in another part of the world there are people who are fighting for every single meal they have. But water isn't just on tap. It's sometimes like a 5-mile round trip in blistering heat, and it's to try and connect with as many human beings on the planet as possible. It's like sharing their struggles. I mean, it can't be sharing that kind of struggle, but at least it's an attempt to understand and empathise with those people that are just in a less fortunate circumstance. And also at the time you're supposed to pray a lot more, so it's 5 times praying a day, and it's supposed to be a really spiritual month, which is hard because I was so hungry. I wasn't very spiritual. I was just angry.
What did the Muslims that you met, what did they think about what you were doing?
They were really supportive. One of the things you're asking, and one of the things that has come more and more, is my entire attitude has changed towards religious people and religion. Maybe not religion, I still don't like it so much, but religious people. They were sincere, they were open, they were warm, they were inviting. They took me to their house and stuff, and let me break fast with them, and at night and so on. I went to the church with them, and to their mosque, obviously, with them, and they were just absolutely lovely. And I told them, and I had a conversation with one guy, a guy called Abdullah. It lasted about 4 hours, and what we found out was that even though we know all the same things, we know the basic kind of reality of the universe and so on, but we have one different opinion on one thing, and that changes our entire view on why we're here and what we're supposed to be doing. And it's fascinating. I mean, it was one of my favourite phrases came from a guy called Son of Samuel. I don't know if you've come across him on Twitter. Dennis Augustine is an ex-pastor, lovely chap, and I was on a podcast with him, and he said that I didn't get more intelligent when I stopped being a theist. And there are so many people who come to the conclusion that I'm not religious, they're religious, therefore they must be a stupid person. And I think I thought that for a lot of my life, when it's just not the case at all. We're all just trying to make sense of this world, and we do our best. So that's one of my attitudes has changed, is that you remove the label off someone, and they're a person just like you are.
Great.
I'm
And
rambling. I apologise.
no, it's okay. I asked you to tell me some of your stories, and so that was one of your stories. What surprised you, though? A different religion.
Scientology was exactly as you'd expect it. I think one of the things that surprised me is that to a point it almost worked. I'm a very chipper person. I have a pretty happy outlook on everything. And I went into the Scientology church for the first time, and they make you do the questionnaire. So I went through and answered all the questions, and it's about 200. Most of them are nonsense. Most of them are, if you wore a hat, which colour hat would you wear? Really arbitrary questions. And some of them, though, were very, very specific, and it's to do with kind of like relationships and your outlook on life. And I made a conscious effort to make sure that I put everything as positive as possible. And they came back, and she went over and she put it in a graph. It's nice when you're looking at your life in a graph form. And she went over, and it was into 7 sections, and it's to do with like stability, happiness, all these kind of basic kind of characteristics of your personality. And she went through at the start, and she said, "Well, I'm looking at your stable, how stable you are, and it shows that you're really erratic, like all over the place. Do you ever feel that?" It's like, no, not really. And she's like, "Well, a lot of people would say that, but they are very erratic." And you go, "Right, okay, so you're not asking, you're telling me, fine." And then she went to the next one and said, "Happiness here. You're actually at the lowest point, and so this is showing that you're depressed, almost to the point of being suicidal." I went, "Right, okay." And she said, "Do you ever feel suicidal?" And just as a joke, I went, "Well, I am now." She didn't get it. and then she kind of moved on to other things, and she's saying, you were healthy, you were an active person." I went, "Well, I am. I run a lot, I climb a lot and stuff." And she kind of guessed that anyway. If you look at someone who's skinny, it's either weird metabolism or they do a bit of exercise. So she guessed it, and she said, "Well, the thing is, because you're erratic, I'm guessing that you have a lot of exercise at one point and then not a lot another time." And that's untrue. I'm always doing something. But I went with it. I said, "Yeah." And I said, "But hang on. If me being erratic means it can change how active I am, does that ever change my happiness level? Does that mean that even though I'm depressed, if I'm erratic, do I have highs as well? I'm not saying I'm bipolar, but do I have like bits of happiness?" And she went, "No." Oh, all right. Fair enough. But you felt it. When someone's telling you you're depressed, I was genuinely like, I got all curled up, and you feel a bit glum, and I felt a bit sweaty and a bit, just a bit unsure about everything. And I don't know if it's because they put a graph in front of you, and then anything with a graph has to be true. But it's quite dangerous. I left and went to the pub, and you think back over all of it, and you go, no, that was all a bit silly. But anyone else, other people who do genuinely have problems with, kind of well-being and emotions and so on, they would go out and they would think, "I need to give this woman a lot of money," or they might feel even worse about themselves. You hear all the stories about Scientology, and most of them seem to be true. It's quite unfortunate.
I don't know anything about Scientology, but why do they do that? Why do they do that personality typecasting? What's the point of that?
Well, there's 2 parts of Scientology. There's one that's the alien bit that they don't talk about anymore because they got laughed at in the 80s. And there's the other part that is based on something called Dianetics, which was created by a guy called L. Ron Hubbard. It's basically like a self-help suggestion. His idea is that you carry memories throughout your life, like actual biological memories, that will inhibit things that you do in the future. Your happiness, what you're like at your job, what you're like in society, family, that kind of stuff. And he suggests that you can talk to someone, they can put you into a kind of trance, although not a trance, and you can go back, not just remember it, but actually go back to the place, so relive it, so kind of transport yourself semi-physically, I guess. And then you can come to terms with it, and that means when you go back to where you are now, that's gone. That's erased from your bad part of your your memory, um, which is, it's, as far as I can tell, nonsense. But the guy who I did it with, so you go through this Dianetics course, and the guy who did it with, we were chatting, and he was asking about how memories are passed on, and because he said also memories can get passed on, and I said, isn't that a bit like Lamarckism, which is a first stab at trying to explain evolution, that you could pass traits on. So if a giraffe stretched its neck, that stretched neck would get passed on. And he said, yeah, and he was a bit confused. And I said, well, I study biology a bit. And he goes, oh, that's what I teach. So I found out he taught A-level biology, and then on the weekend he'll come and teach something completely against what he thought. Things like cells themselves having memory. I don't know if you know anything about cell biology. I don't know much, but I know there's no way they can have a memory. And all these things about, he's against kind of counselling and psychiatry and stuff like that. These kind of well-tested biological pursuits, and it's very bizarre, this kind of dissonance that he must have to pull. That he goes and teaches and does a good job during the week, and then goes and does something that's almost completely counter to that on the weekend. Which sounds a bit weird.
Wow.
So, what other anything else you want to kind of tell us about that happened to you during this? Did you say 17-month experience?
What else did I do? I made a Jehovah's Witness cry. That was fun.
Okay. Why were they crying?
Sorry?
Why were they crying?
They're actually really nice. I asked if I could go door knocking with them, and they said I couldn't for the reason I'll get back to later. But they came round to my house and we had cups of tea, and they went through what they would do with someone else. They were really, really accommodating, really nice people. They still knock on my door, coming to see if I'm all right and that kind of stuff. But I was at one of the services. They called them meetings instead of services, and we had to. They gave me a pamphlet at the end. Have you seen the Watchtower?
I've seen them. I haven't read them.
Magazines. You've read, yeah. And on the back, it was saying something about evolution, anyway. And one of the ladies was saying, she was telling her story, so I was asking how she got into it. And she used to be Catholic. She didn't like the church. Someone came, knocked on her door. She was in a bad mood. They opened the Bible, said a verse. She said, "Well, you better come in." And ever since then, she's been a Jehovah's Witness in 28 years, something like that. And she was saying that she didn't like other religions because Catholics believe such weird things, like they believe in a Trinity, such nonsense. And she's so glad she's and other people also believe in evolution and really weird things like that. I said, well, it's a bit funny, really. So what do you mean? I said, well, evolution is true. It's fact. It's kind of done. It's done with now. And I tried to explain what it was. She didn't particularly understand what it was. She had an idea, but then she was saying that it didn't explain the dawn of life. And it turned out she used to be a chemist. So I was saying that you can tell me more about this, because it was more biochemistry. Mine's more biology, my background. So I was trying to explain ways in which we think we might never know exactly how it happened, how the first organic molecule came to be, but we can have certain ideas, and we go with whichever is the most reasonable given the evidence. And I could kind of tell that it was getting a little bit more heated, this conversation, because I was a smart arse that had an answer for everything. So she was going from physics to biology, and I'm not a physicist, but I can regurgitate stuff that clever people have said. And so I was kind of going through all that kind of stuff, and she was getting more and more agitated. And I didn't really know what was going on with the conversation. And then all of a sudden she said, evolution doesn't tell me where I'm going after I'm dead. And you kind of realise that one of the things that must be the kind of crux of all religious belief is the fear of death. It has to be. We were having a completely different conversation, but all that was going through her head was that not only might she believe something that's wrong, but if I am right, she's got nothing to look forward to after she perishes, and that must be quite a frightening thought. Anyway, she got dragged off by her husband after a bit. It all created a bit of a scene.
Did you have this conversation with her while you were acting as a Jehovah's Witness, or was this before? I can't remember what you said.
That's the thing. Before acting, I tried to start with the idea that I would I didn't want to tell anybody because if you tell someone that you're writing about them, they act in a very different way. So I
Sure.
wanted to kind of sneak in and get something as honest as possible. And then I felt a bit bad about lying to people. And it was obvious that if anyone ever spoke to me, I had no idea what they were on about. So it was obvious from the start that I wasn't in part of their faith at all. The questions I got asked when I was Hindu and a Muslim, I just had no idea the answer. So it wouldn't have mattered. I would have been found out in some way, and I thought that might have been a bit awkward. So I was very honest really with people, saying that I'm here to join your service. I'd like to see what you do, and I'm writing a book about it and that kind of stuff. And the thing is that they're so warm and sincere is that they just want to tell you their story. Everyone likes telling people their story. This is why I'm here now.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm messaging Adam to stop making so much noise upstairs. I can just hear all this racket upstairs. So what was the hardest religion to follow? And I know you said Ramadan was the hardest, but was there any religion that you found, just the rules in general, not during Ramadan, but the rules in general were incredibly difficult to follow, or the doctrine was hard to follow?
There are some things that are just completely counter to who I am as a person. So, for example, Mormonism. At the end of each church service, the congregation is segregated. So you'll have males on one side, and females on the other, and we'll talk about really manly stuff. And they'll talk about, I assume, kittens and soft furnishings. I don't know what women
Oh my gosh.
when they're by themselves. But I said, why are we being separated? And one of the ladies kind of laughed, and she just went, oh, it's what he wants. Sorry? And is it? And she went, and then she realised I was a bit taken aback by it. So she went, oh no, it's so it gives us women a chance to have a say, because if we're in the same room with men, they'll just talk over us, and we don't have the confidence to do it. And I thought, how 1950s is this? Like the women I know. I mean, I don't know who you follow on Twitter. If you know Ra, Franco Soup.
Yep.
If you put her in a room, I once heard her on a radio tell one of the guests to pipe down. She wasn't even a guest; she was a phone-in. She told the guest on the radio show to pipe down, and it's just so away from the rest of society in this kind of this 1950s where we all go to the drawing room and talk about how our industries are doing and things like that. That was a bit odd, and you have to go along with it, but it feels wrong. It feels it just feels counter to what you think of as a kind of normal human being. Islam, of course, was the hardest. There's no getting around that. It was the worst thing. I did do yoga, and then couldn't walk for 3 days. That was painful.
Yeah, some of those, I've done some really hard yoga before, and going into it thinking, well, I'm athletic, I've done a little bit of yoga at home, it'll be fine. And you get into these poses, and you're supposed to be in squatting for like an entire minute, and you're just about to cry because you just want out of that damn pose. And I remember this one particular yoga I was doing for a little while. When I first started doing it, for a couple days afterwards, I couldn't walk. Just like walking like this, So
it was horrible. It was horrible. So yeah, my friends came and did that with me, and one of my friends was okay, but the other one, she couldn't put her arms down. So for the next day, she just had her arms in the air. And I saw her walk in the door because I'd gone back to see her the next day, and she was trying to get at the door handle, and that was funny enough, really, but it made me feel better about myself. But yeah, not so much fun.
And you were doing yoga while you were practicing what religion?
Hinduism, yeah. There was quite a lot of nice things that came from Hinduism, and if my joints could take it, I would have carried on doing yoga.
Mm-hmm.
I did one, and that was enough for me. I thought it was one more class after being permanently disabled. I didn't want to do that. It makes you wonder if Stephen Hawking was a yoga fan.
So you're a parent, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So I was wondering if you could tell me about how this experiment affected your family, if at all, and what kinds of things you were telling your wife and your children or child?
Children,
Children.
they don't know. They have no idea.
Okay.
I just pop out every so often, and um, the wife obviously was annoyed during certain religions. It's like in the Jewish tradition, obviously when it's that part of the cycle, and they're considered what's the phrase?
Unclean, I believe.
Oh, unclean. That's the one. Unclean. So I can you can't even touch, handshake, anything like that. So that's irritating to say the least. So yeah, the kids were kept out of it. The wife's glad it's over. But yeah,
So,
they're quite young, so you don't want them to say I've got no religious belief, but it's up to them. They can do whatever makes them happy. So I don't want them to ever think that that it's something that I want to influence or anything like that. It's completely their choice. I'm there to answer questions. I'm there to hopefully point them in a way where they can get answers. But you know, it's ultimately their choice.
so you think if they were older and they wanted to do something like this, would you support them?
I'll support anything they want to do. Yeah, whatever. You know, as long as it doesn't involve me too much. Yeah.
So you're done.
I'm done. I'm done with this. Yeah. Yeah. But no, I can't imagine anyone would want to do this.
Yeah, when I was started reading your blog, and then I wrote that one blog post about you, and I thought that this would be really interesting to do with my children because they're old enough to understand what's happening, but I wouldn't do a whole month. And I thought maybe 1 week at a time, where you followed all the rules for a week and you picked maybe 4 or 6. And I thought that would be kind of a neat thing to do, especially since I don't have a lot of personal experience with religion myself. Kind of let them kind of dig in firsthand, take them to a church or a synagogue or a mosque or some kind of religious place and let them ask questions. I felt like that was a really cool idea, just to kind of understand what's happening with religious people and to understand their religious ideas firsthand. And so I thought it was a neat idea, and I haven't asked the kids about it yet, because at the same time I don't want them to be like, oh, mom's making us do this thing, it's gonna suck. I want them to just be curious and want to do it. We've already done that a little bit with Buddhism because my daughter was interested in Buddhism, so we took her to a temple. She took a meditating class, and she got to meet, I don't know what they call their leaders, gurus, and talk to him a little bit. And I think that was really valuable for her, and I'd like for her to be able to do that a little bit more. Any advice for parents that want to do that?
Advice. I don't know. It changed from kids to kids, I guess. Ours asked a question. It comes out sometimes, and in the same way that, and this isn't meant to belittle anyone, but in the same way they ask questions about things like Santa and Tooth Fairy. It's this thing that they've never seen, but they've heard of, and they hear other people talking about. And the eldest did ask, I'm not sure if Santa exists, and the right answer to that is, well, I don't know. What do you think? So what is it that Santa is supposed to be able to do? And they go through, and you go, would you be able to do that? And they're like, well, no, probably not. You lead them, but you're asking them questions. You're trying to make them get to it themselves. But in terms of like taking them to a different, I think it's important to meet people of different, even if it's just cultural exchange. I mean, in our particular the place where we live, I think it's 99.9% white middle class. They have no idea about any other kind of cultures, any kind of race. So every so often we take them around. There's an amazing Indian supermarket in the city just across from ours. So we take them around there, and it's a really heavily Muslim populated area, and they interact with other people from different races. That's important. It has to be. We kind of put ourselves in this social bubble and never experience people on the outside, and that is why they'll grow up with prejudices, I imagine. If you never see anyone of a different race, when you do, the first time you do it's 25, you might be a bit confused by the whole thing. I would say always. All knowledge is good knowledge, and all understanding is good understanding.
The interesting thing about religion too is, especially people who are extremely religious, it filters into almost every aspect of their lives, and so it does become a part of the culture for them. And so, you mentioned cultural understanding, and I think that's really important as well. Is you have to understand the whole person, the whole culture, and if religion is a part of that, then there's some understanding that needs to take place there. You don't have to accept it, you don't have to believe it, but you do have to understand it if you want to embrace other cultures and embrace this whole idea of cultural diversity and understanding other people and being able to work with other people, all those things that are important in our adult lives that like you were saying, in this little white suburban bubble, we can't do that for our children unless we go out there and bring it to them, or bring them to other people with different ideas, and different cultures. So I like that aspect of what you're doing.
Yeah, that's definitely important. I follow somebody on Tumblr who has 3 really small kids, and they live in an area like what you were just talking about, that's primarily white, upper middle class, suburban, and we live in an area like that as well. And she was saying that she drove one of her husband's coworkers home, and it was an African American, and her daughter was in the car, and I don't know, I think she's like 3 or 4, and she's like, "You're brown, you're different than us. Why do you look so different?" And she's like, "I was mortified, but it made me realize that I have not taught any cultural diversity whatsoever. She hasn't been exposed to it. And obviously, I have to do something about this because, like you said, you don't want, your son or daughter, 25 years old, to say that to somebody. So you have to teach that right away to show them. And I've done something similar with my son. Just little things that I try to teach. Like I think I told you this before, Aubrey, but when describing a particular color, he would say skin color. And he's referring to like a white person's skin color like ours. And so I made sure to correct him that it's not just skin color, that's our skin color. You know what I mean? So the default is not ours. There are a lot of different ones. So when you say that it's a skin color, at least say our skin color, not everybody's in general, just things like that, because otherwise he's just going to think that there's only white and everybody else is different and confusing.
White is right.
I know, exactly.
It's dangerously close to that.
Exactly, yes. And yeah, like I said, we're in an area that it just does not have a lot of cultural diversity. And even, it's getting a little better now, but my husband grew up in this area, and he still talks about one black person in his high school of like several hundred people, and he remembers him specifically because it was the only one. And I'm just like, that's crazy to me. Like, that's crazy. No.
Yeah, I think I've definitely had those kinds of experiences as well, and I'm trying to avoid that with my children and making sure that they're meeting all different kinds of people, not only people that look different, but people who think different. And spending a lot of time teaching them how to interact with people who are differently from them, and disagreeing with people, how to respectfully disagree with people, how to respectfully decline. And it's hard when they're 6 and 8, and the other child is not being respectful because they weren't taught that. Especially when we get into religious differences, I think. Race difference, where as a society we're a lot more sensitive to it, and we're, I think, more proactive as a culture than we ever were in the past. But with religious differences, it's not so much, and so I remember last year, and I've talked about this before, my daughter came out as, she doesn't use the label atheist, but she doesn't believe in God. And I don't know why she did this, but she blurted it out to her class. And there were a couple of kids that were really um, taken aback and immediately decided that they didn't like her anymore. One little girl told her and the rest of the class that she was untrustworthy, therefore couldn't sit in certain spots in the classroom, and just started to tried to take away things from her. And I'm trying to teach my daughter to accept other people and into her life, and to have understanding about all these different ideas, and then you have this other kid that's really trying to bully her and take things away, and it's hard when you're in that situation to get an 8-year-old to accept other people when someone's so blatantly unaccepting of you.
Well, and that's where the indoctrination obviously comes in, because there's no way an 8-year-old can come to the conclusion that an atheist is untrustworthy based on evidence. There's absolutely no way. No 8-year-old would realize that after interacting with another 8-year-old and just say, well, they're untrustworthy because I've seen it in all their personalities. They're just spewing information that their parents are giving them. It's really sad.
It is.
There was that poll, wasn't there, in America that said that atheists were on par as the least trustworthy people, level with rapists, I think it was. They were right at the bottom when they were trying to, so yeah, that's definitely the parents talking through that 8-year-old. But the only thing you can do you can only do what's right, can't you, for that child? You can only do what's right for your child and say that you have to accept that person. The way you do it is you say, I know those kids are being dicks, but they do not talk for an entire faith or body of people. They talk for themselves. The problem is when you give labels to someone, you go, that person's a Christian, he's acting like that. That might be all Christians. And whenever you say that person's a Christian, what you have to realize is you don't know anything about that person. You actually have to get to know them. So what you have to build in anyone is a desire to actually talk to someone else as a human being, rather than assume anything because of any label they've got above them.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I like the idea of going out to all these different religions, groups of people, and talking to them. Because then you're building understanding of what's happening in their community, and you're able to identify these kind of outliers, these intolerant outliers, if there are intolerant outliers, depending on, I think it depends on what religious sect we're talking about, but then also people of different cultures and races in general as well. You want to make sure that you understand a variety of people, and you want them to understand you too. And that, I think there's a lot you can do as far as PR work for atheists, especially in America, since we are considered so untrustworthy. Say, hey, I'm just here to learn about you. I'm not here to judge. Just, and just have put your learner cap on when you're there, not your judgmental cap.
Well, definitely being open-minded is really important for parents. I can't stress this enough, because I've noticed there's a huge problem in the atheist community, and I know people hate saying atheist community or movement because they say it's just a lack of belief, but it is a community of people who just have nothing but contempt for religious people, and they're very cynical and angry, and it might just be a phase that they're going through, but that can be passed on to your children, to just have this sort of dislike for all people who are religious. And I know you were saying earlier, T, it's really important not to just automatically think somebody's stupid because they're religious. Like, they automatically have this lower level of intelligence because they believe in this, so I'm going to treat them that way. And if you treat people that way, and if you talk about people that way, your children are going to pick up on that, whether you tell them to or not. So it's really important that you have respect for these people, not just their religion, but their cultural practices that are integrated into that religion, I think.
Agreed. Motion passed.
So, what religions did you follow in your adventure?
Let me get my fingers out. So I did Christianity. Sorry, that sounds a bit weird, doesn't it? Sorry. Yeah, Christianity, Hinduism, Scientology, Islam, paganism, Satanism, Jehovah's Witness, Judaism, spiritualist. I remember more. Spiritualist. Sikh.
Oh, okay.
There's another one in there, and then Jedi. Jedi was a nice way to end.
I forgot that there was that whole Jedi movement. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. I
There's
bet.
there's a Jedi religion.
Oh hi. Oh hi.
Oh my gosh.
I'm gonna try
Wow.
to start a Buffy the Vampire Slayer religion. And
um,
watch that sci-fi program.
can you talk about Satanism a little bit? Because I have done a little research into that, and a lot of the stuff that I've read, I've really liked. I really liked what they have to say. So I feel like they're a really accepting religion, and you should talk about that a little bit.
Okay, that was just after paganism, and so it was kind of a nice way into it that paganism kind of puts you back into nature, and Satanism says that whatever our nature is absolutely fine. We shouldn't kind of try and stop any of these primordial urges. So you take lust, for example, which is commonly a deadly sin. Then you have to go, what is wrong with lust? Without lust, we don't form relationships. What about greed? Greed, it just shows that you know what you want from this world, that you can come into this world and you can make something positive for yourself. Why would we consider these bad things? So it was originally like a personal philosophy by a guy called Anton LaVey, and it seems absolutely plausible to me as a way of kind of living your life. It's not being afraid of doing things for yourself, kind of redressing the balance to what exactly morality is. So morality isn't just this dichotomy of black and white. It's a whole spectrum. So it's not a case of that was the wrong thing to do. It's I did that. What has it gained me? Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? It's just looking a bit more open and honestly at the whole thing, and it's listening to all your instincts and your biology. And it's not being afraid to listen to those instincts. And it's being open and honest with yourself about what kind of things that you want, what your desires are, what your lusts are. I came across a guy called Lee Banks who recently started the UK Church of Rational Satanism, and I joined as a member. And really nice chap. And what he was trying to do was take it a step further and make it into a kind of practical psychology rather than philosophy as well. So tried to bring it into the new century of all the work we've done with neuroscience and stuff like that, and it was really interesting stuff. So what kind of stuff did you read about it?
Just exactly what you were talking about as far as looking at those things that are kind of prohibited or discouraged in other religions, and encouraging you to be yourself and not having all of these contingencies upon what kind of person you can be. So I really liked what they were saying. And to me, before that, I didn't know anything about it, so it was almost kind of a joke. I didn't realize that it was like organized. Like if somebody says I'm a Satanist, I'm like, oh, that's funny. Okay, whatever. But when I did some research, I liked what I found. So what did you have to do as far as other practices besides going to, I guess, a church or a temple or whatever? Was there any restrictions or anything?
No, that was a beautiful thing about it. Yeah, it was a nice couple of months following Ramadan where it was so restricted and so rule led, and to go from that into paganism, Satanism was wholly satisfying, and they're probably the two religions I connected with the most. I don't know if that's because they are in themselves the nicer religions, or just because they were a back end of something that was quite a horrible existence. Um, so I did a lot of kind of reading, and I talked a lot with Lee Banks on it. But really, there isn't. It doesn't believe in kind of rituals and stuff, in the sense that rituals are kind of there to give kind of submit to something else. What Satanism asks you to do is to consider yourself a god. You're the only person that you've got, and so any rituals has to be for yourself. That doesn't mean masturbation, but I'll admit that in the book right now. I didn't just sit at home in a darkened room watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Um, but, so a lot of things, I try to live a nice life, and I try to change the way I talk to other people. So it sounds quite horrible to say, but I got quite into it for the month. But see how easily you can manipulate other people to see your point of view without just telling them to see your point of view. It was quite fun. So I did it at work, I did it at home, I did it with friends, and you just try and find ways of you're having a disagreement at the start. How do you both get on my side without upsetting anyone? So that was quite interesting in this kind of. It sounds almost like hypnotising in a way. Of course, it's not that, but it's it's definitely kind of psychological warfare, really.
Yeah, that's what those are all the things that I've heard about Satanism as well. I actually had a friend who dabbled in it for a while, and he said, basically all the same things that you're saying. So, and it is fairly organized, yeah. Although my friend, I don't think he did ever go. I don't think he ever became a part of a group, though. I think he did it all on his own and read Anton LaVey, and he did a lot of the rituals. But again, those were, as you said, deeply personal. No one else was ever involved in those rituals.
He watched Buffy as well.
I'm sorry?
Did he watch Buffy as well?
I don't understand that. I'm sorry. What?
Did he watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer?
Oh. I do not know. It's possible. But if he did watch it, he only watched it to see Sarah Michelle Gellar, not to follow the storyline. I can tell you that.
Yeah, there was no storyline as far as I could tell.
Okay, so we lost Amanda. Hopefully she'll be back. Is there anything else you want to tell us, or anything else we should know about you?
Nah, not really. No.
Are you going to write this book?
Yeah, I wrote the blogs, and I wrote up until about the end of Jehovah's Witness, and I had about 5 more after that, and that's when I started trying to compile the book. And I wrote the blogs as a test to see which writing styles worked, to see if anyone was interested in it as well. And reception's been all right. I mean, I'm not going to be a bestseller in any kind of sense. I might sell 4, depending on how many copies my mum buys. Yeah, I'm going. So it's not going to be. There might be a couple of overlaps and there might be a couple of paragraphs, but it should all be new. It should all be new stuff, and the stuff I've written so far is all brand new and goes into more detail. I mean, I tried to do the blogs no more than 1,000 words because I thought people would lose interest. So the book's only going to be 1,000 words, and I'll have it done. I'll have it done soon.
No, I'm definitely interested in your book because from a parenting perspective, I see it as, okay, maybe I'm not willing to do this religious tourism thing, but reading something that someone else did and talking about that experience firsthand, I still think is valuable. And maybe depending on the way you write it, maybe I'll even hand it off to one of my kids.
No. When I first started writing it, there was definitely an attempt to try and be funny on every single line, and then that kind of died off. There's only so many puns you can make before people get bored. So really, the book's trying to be a kind of it's a bit personal growth, but it's that happens anyway because I changed a bit in a year anyway, so that was bound to happen. But it's mainly to do with what kind of religions say, what my reception was to those people, a few stories, and also a bit of science and wonder in there as well. That's what I'm interested in. So it's hopefully it won't be too. I don't think it'll be that sweary. If that's what you're worried about, there'll be one cock gag, I guarantee it. But
I don't worry about swearing, at all. My philosophy on swearing is this philosophy on a lot of things. My children are going to be exposed to it anyway. And so my job as a parent is to teach them what the words mean, teach them why they shouldn't say them, and then just, help them through that. Just you shouldn't say these as a child, and I probably shouldn't say these as an adult, but it's a choice that you get to make as an adult, but not so much as a child. Um, they don't get in trouble for swearing because I don't personally care. But they can get in trouble for it at school, so we kind of talk about why that is. They get it. So swearing doesn't bother me. Now, if you had like a very graphic illustrations or something like that, maybe not, but
Get someone to do it. I know a guy who could do that.
Anything else, Amanda, before we wrap up?
I was dropped for a minute, so I didn't hear the last question that you asked him, but I was wondering if you made any lifelong friends from this experience. Did you meet anybody who you would totally hang out with again? Like a lot, like somebody that you're just like, that's a really awesome person.
That's an amazing question. And now I've just realised I haven't, and I wish I had. I met a lot of nice people. I'm not the most confident person when it comes to socialising and stuff like that. So I never went back. I got a few numbers. Some people said, if you have any more questions, you call me. I met loads of lovely people who I knew if I met in the street again, there'll be a conversation. I do still get emails. And I do still get some knocks from Jehovah's Witnesses I met. But whether that's just because it's in their nature to knock an email, I don't know. But there's still a chat in there. But no, I wish I had. I wish I had met. The lifelong friends I've met have been met from people from Twitter, actually, from doing it on there. So you're kind of talking and you realise that you're talking to some people more. And there's a guy called David Riddle who I've met, who I've seen a couple of times, and he's coming to stay at my house in a month's time. He's the nicest man. Guy, Acres Podfish, Adam Reeks, who does the Herd Mentality podcast, Ra, who I've mentioned. I consider them friends. I consider them close people who we chat and share witticisms and so on with. But no, from the actual meeting of people of religion, the sad answer is no. But there are people that I've met on the peripheral of that I consider friends.
Interesting.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, T. We really appreciate it. We love having fun today. I was really looking forward to hearing you talk about your experiences practicing some of these different religions. So before we go, I wanted to announce that the Godless Family Resource does have a new sponsor. We still have Be Secular as our sponsor, and you can go to their website and purchase a T-shirt, and Godless Family will receive a percentage of the money, and then Be Secular will then use a portion of their own profits to donate to another charity. Usually it's a secular charity or a secular activist group. But now we have another sponsor, and it's absenceofclothing.com, and they're doing kind of the same sort of thing. They are science and atheist T-shirts, and they donate 50% of their profits to a charity, and they're going to let me choose this time. So if you want to suggest a charity for these donations to go to, I would be happy to hear that. You can tweet those to me at Godless Family on Twitter. But you can get 10% off if you go to their website and you just type in the code TGFR. It stands for the Godless Family Resource. And I really love what both of these organizations are doing, because I think the T-shirt is important, because I think it's important that we're out as atheists or secular-minded individuals. And I think it's important that we're supporting other organizations, other charities that are doing good work, not only for the secular community, but for humanity. So if you feel like you need another atheist T-shirt, now you have two options to go to, and you can support Godless Family a little bit in the process. So that's it for me. Do I need to mention anything else, Amanda? Did I forget anything?
I don't think so. I think it's in, what, 10 days, 9 days, where we're going to be talking to Dave Hawkes again? A week from Tuesday?
The 23rd, yep.
Okay.
In my mind it was this coming Tuesday. So I'm glad you said something because I was going to say next Tuesday. Well, this coming Tuesday, but yeah, next Tuesday, September 23rd, David Hawks is going to be back on. We're going to talk about homeopathy. I'm still working on my pronunciation because I've always said it as homeopathy. So I've been getting ridiculed for my pronunciation. So working on trying to fix that. And so we're really excited to have David back on. He's a great guest. And I think that's it. So go read T's blog, go watch Prophet Cast, go check out the Secular and Absence of Clothing, and we'll see everyone on September 23rd. Bye, everybody.
Bye.